My childhood wasn't built on love, it was built on a very specific, carefully maintained economic arrangement. I was Elara, the architect, the reliable one. My brother was Julian, the visionary, the golden child. I provided the foundation, he provided the ego. For years, I viewed my success not as personal freedom, but as a tax I had to pay for my family's emotional maintenance. I didn't just pay my own way, I paid for Julian's revolving door of failed startups, my mother's vintage automobile restoration hobby, and I held the primary lease guarantor status on my parents' last 3 apartment rentals. It wasn't generosity, it was the cost of transactional inclusion. They didn't thank me, they accepted it as a natural resource, like clean water or sunlight. Julian, meanwhile, was celebrated for his potential. His endless stream of bad ideas, NFTs before they were cool, sustainable kombucha breweries that never brewed, were lauded as brave entrepreneurial spirit. My meticulously planned, multi-million-dollar architectural contracts were simply good luck, or her naturally dry personality makes her suited for engineering. My life had one major objective looming: acquiring a specific, historic commercial building downtown. It was the building that housed my late estranged grandmother's old jewelry shop, and its purchase had been my singular focus for 5 years. I had scraped together $150,000, locked tight in a dedicated high-interest savings account earmarked solely for the down payment. The trouble started, as it always did, with Julian. He had decided that his latest venture, a highly leveraged investment in obscure municipal bonds, was foolproof. It wasn't. It was illegal. Apparently, trying to bribe a municipal treasurer in a different state constitutes securities fraud and racketeering, leading to a rather nasty arrest and a bail requirement that exceeded his imaginary net worth by several magnitudes. The first call came from my father, strained and demanding. "Elara, we need $150,000. Now." I was reviewing blueprints in my office, the air conditioning set low. I didn't even drop my pen. I already knew the number. Julian was always predictable in the scale of his financial disasters. "That's my down payment, Dad." "It's non-negotiable," I stated, keeping my voice flat. "That money is for the building purchase, scheduled for next quarter." "A building?" "Elara, this is your brother. He is facing real jail time. You can always buy a building later. Julian needs his freedom now so he can clear his name. He needs to face the consequences of his actions," I replied. "I am not funding his criminal defense." "The answer is no." I hung up. I expected tears, guilt trips, or perhaps threats. What I didn't expect was the swift, silent, surgical extraction of my assets. 2 days later, the automated bank notification pinged me, "Alert, large withdrawal initiated on savings account 9811, I pulled up the statement immediately. Debit, $150,000. Description, family emergency fund transfer. My parents still had my outdated account credentials from 5 years ago when I'd briefly given them access to deposit birthday money from an aunt. I had forgotten to close that loophole. It was a careless mistake, and I paid the exact price for it. I immediately called the bank, freezing the account and flagging the transaction as fraudulent, but the transfer had already cleared the intermediary bank and was likely already applied to Julian's bond. Instead of calling them, I initiated a forensic trace, compiling the documents, the screenshot of the $150,000 theft, the fraudulent transaction description, and the accompanying internal bank memo noting the access credentials used. Receipt 1, bank statements. They knew I had the proof. They knew I was capable of legally destroying them. To preempt the inevitable confrontation, they utilized the upcoming family event, their 50th wedding anniversary gala, as their weapon. The anniversary gala was the capstone of their social calendar. They had booked the grand ballroom of the Opaline Towers, a historic commercial structure downtown. They had invited over 200 guests, including key figures in their business and social circles. Late that evening, a text arrived from my mother. It wasn't a conciliatory message or an apology. It was a unilateral declaration of war. Mother, 8:41 p.m. Elara, don't cause trouble. The money is gone, but it saved Julian's life. Your $150,000 down payment is irrelevant compared to his freedom. We are forced to make a difficult decision regarding the party. Because you are being so hostile and unsupportive. Your attendance at the Opaline gala would be detrimental to the family image. It's embarrassing enough as it is. Do not come. Your father and I have decided we must prioritize our emotional health and Julian's reintegration. You are officially uninvited. Your ticket and place setting have been allocated to the new lead attorney we hired. He is actually useful. You need to understand, Elara, you are disposable right now. Julian is not. I read the final line 3 times. You are disposable right now. Julian is not. I didn't reply. I didn't cry. My hands didn't even shake. The message didn't hurt because it was cruel, it hurt because it was factual. It was the unvarnished truth of how they viewed me, laid bare in an 8:41 p.m. text message. Receipt 2, screenshot of betrayal text. I saved the screenshot. I checked the date, October 14th. The gala was scheduled for October 29th. I closed the message thread, then opened my personal investment portfolio. The Opaline Towers building, where the gala was being held, was listed under my ownership portfolio. The secret I held, the one they never bothered to ask about, was that the historic structure housing their precious Opaline ballroom was the exact building my grandmother had quietly set up the trust fund for. It wasn't just a potential purchase anymore. The purchase had been finalized 3 weeks prior, using entirely separate, silent funding. My parents had stolen $150,000 from me, called me disposable, and uninvited me from their party, all to be held inside a venue I secretly owned. This wasn't going to be a confrontation. This was going to be an eviction. And I still had 2 weeks to prepare the paperwork. Calmly. Factually. With receipts ready. #ACT2, the trust in the folder of doom. The immediate aftermath of my mother's text message felt less like emotional shock and more like confirmation bias. I was disposable. I was useful only for my capital, and once that capital was surgically extracted, I was an inconvenience. The realization settled over me like a cold, heavy truth I'd always known but only now had in writing. I didn't call them back. I didn't text Julian. I initiated the gray rock strategy immediately. Any attempt to engage would only provide them with emotional ammunition or a narrative of victimhood to deploy against me. If they wanted a hostile scapegoat, I would give them silence. Silence is the only negotiation tool available when the opposition views truth as optional and resources as infinite. My focus shifted entirely to the logistics of the Opaline Gala on October 29th. For 5 years, my parents had watched me meticulously hoard the $150,000 for the down payment. They had celebrated this goal only because it was quantifiable, a visible pile of cash they could potentially dip into. What they never asked, and what I never volunteered, was the existence of Grandmother Eleanor's trust. Grandmother Eleanor, my mother's own mother, had been the original black sheep of the family, a successful jeweler who viewed my parents' materialism with open disdain. She understood that wealth needed protection, especially from the family who claimed to love you. When she passed a decade ago, her estate was complexly managed. The majority of her wealth, and specifically the property that housed her original shop, was placed into a blind, irrevocable trust, which only matured upon my demonstration of professional and financial competence, a metric my parents had conveniently ignored. The trust was structured not just to give me the funds, but to ensure the physical preservation of the Opaline Towers building, a beautiful example of neoclassical architecture downtown. It was a secret weapon, hidden in plain sight. While I was publicly raising the $150,000 down payment, a fund that acted as bait, ironically, Grandmother Eleanor's trust was quietly handling the purchase of the entire commercial structure. The $150,000 theft, therefore, didn't impede my ownership, It merely provided the final, necessary justification for the public, surgical annihilation of their influence over my life. I had already closed on the building 3 weeks before they stole my money. My parents, in their rush to secure the ballroom for their extravagant anniversary, had simply called the venue manager, unaware that the manager now answered to me, Elara, the new, silent, private proprietor of Opaline Towers, LLC. They had signed a standard, short-term rental agreement for the grand ballroom, which contained boilerplate language regarding tenant conduct, municipal compliance, and perhaps most relevantly, immediate termination clauses relating to fraud committed by the booking party that results in public relations damage to the venue owner. I spent the 2 weeks leading up to the gala not grieving the theft, but constructing my folder of doom. I approached the preparation with the methodical precision of an architect detailing seismic retrofitting plans. Every document had to be legally sound, chronologically correct, and utterly devastating. The folder contained 1. Deed of trust and property ownership, a notarized copy of the full deed, naming Opaline Towers, LLC, and listing me as the sole managing member, as the legal owner of the historic building, dated 3 weeks prior to the theft. This was the foundation. 2. The fraudulent transfer records, receipt 1. The bank statements, flagged transaction, and the bank's internal investigation memo confirming that my parents used outdated credentials to unlawfully initiate the $150,000 transfer, earmarked for Julian's bail bond. This confirmed the criminal nature of their actions, linking them directly to the golden child's legal problems. 3. Rental agreement breach document, a meticulously highlighted copy of the contract they signed, cross-referenced with the public records of Julian's arrest and the use of stolen funds for his bail, citing the clause permitting immediate termination due to actions detrimental to the landlord's reputation and financial security. 4. Official eviction notice, notice to quit, a formal, legally compliant notice prepared by my private legal counsel. It cited the contract breaches and stipulated an immediate vacancy requirement, effective the moment it was served. This wasn't a warning, it was a mandate. 5. The disposable screenshot, receipt 2. My mother's text message. This was purely for the audience, the social receipt. It held no legal power, but it perfectly framed the motivation for my actions. This was not a dispute over money, it was a response to their deliberate cruelty and categorization of me as lesser. My life remained rigorously ordered during this preparation period. I oversaw a multi-million-dollar hospital wing construction and finalized the purchase of a new condo with funds entirely separate from the stolen $150,000. My parents assumed, based on my silence, that I was either sulking or preparing a dramatic, ineffective plea for reconciliation. They mistook procedural silence for defeat. The Opaline Gala was scheduled for Saturday, October 29, 7 p.m. They had invited 200 of the city's elite, all people who knew my professional success, and all people who were deeply invested in upholding the appearance of social stability. The beauty of my plan was the inherent contrast. My parents had planned an expensive, highly visible performance of success to cover the quiet scandal of Julian's arrest. I was going to leverage that precise visibility. The eviction notice was time-sensitive. It had to be served at the height of the ceremony, ensuring maximum audience saturation. The moment their carefully constructed facade was loudest, I would use the evidence, the receipts, to reduce the entire thing to ashes. I checked the time. October 28, 24 hours until I walked back into the Opaline Towers, not as the uninvited scapegoat, but as the owner, the landlord, and the recipient of $150,000 worth of stolen capital. The folder of doom was clipped, sealed, and ready for deployment. #ACT3, the uninvited landlord. The Opaline Gala was the ultimate performance of social stability. When I arrived precisely at 7:30 p.m., the grand ballroom was already saturated with the city's established elite, politicians, developers, and old-money socialites. Everyone was dressed in black-tie opulence, projecting an air of frictionless wealth and success. My parents had meticulously constructed a facade of 50 years of blissful unity, financed by my 50 years of diligent labor. I chose a charcoal silk sheath dress, structurally impeccable, paired with minimal jewelry, the antithesis of the glittering excess filling the room. I walked past the velvet ropes, nodding once to the nervous venue manager, Mr. Davies, who was positioned near the entrance. He gave me a brief, coded glance confirming compliance. The team is ready. I was uninvited, yet I arrived with the supreme confidence of a building owner making a routine inspection. The entire Opaline Towers building, the meticulously restored marble, the soaring, arched ceilings, the very air conditioning system humming overhead, belonged to Opaline Towers, LLC. And Opaline Towers, LLC was me. I moved slowly along the perimeter of the room, observing the architecture of the space, not the dynamics of the party. The lighting was adequate, but the floral arrangements were excessively large and distracting. I made a mental note to address the event planner's taste later. My focus was purely proprietary. My mother spotted me from across the room, mid-conversation with the mayor's wife. Her face, usually so adept at performing serenity, cracked. It was a beautiful sight, a flicker of pure, unadulterated panic piercing the veneer of marital bliss. She excused herself hastily, navigating the crowd with sharp, agitated energy, my father shadowing her like an ill-fitting accessory. "Elara," my mother hissed, pulling me into the shadow of a colossal ice sculpture. "What in God's name are you doing? I told you not to come. You are damaging the entire mood." My voice was low and perfectly modulated, a sound designed to travel no further than the three of us. I received the text, Mother. I simply chose to disregard it. My father stepped forward, his face reddening. Disregard it? This is our 50th anniversary. We sacrificed everything to ensure Julian's freedom. We warned you about causing a scene. You did not sacrifice anything, Dad, I corrected, maintaining eye contact. You committed theft. You stole $150,000 from my dedicated down payment account using fraudulent access. That is not a sacrifice, it is a crime. He stammered, his public mask slipping entirely. It was necessary. We gave Julian the support he needed. You, on the other hand, show up here, uninvited, demanding what, exactly? I simply held up my hand, indicating I required silence. At that moment, Julian emerged from the receiving line, smelling faintly of new cologne and panic suppression. He saw the tension and immediately moved to intercept, desperate to assert his recovered golden child status. "Look who decided to crash the party," Julian sneered, leaning in conspiratorially toward my parents, ensuring his voice carried just enough for the surrounding tables to catch the scent of drama. Did she come for a slice of cake or a pity check? Maybe she wants to serve the appetizers to earn back some of the bail money we had to borrow because she wouldn't help? The insult was perfectly tailored to humiliate me, to frame me not just as poor, but as the help beneath the assembled elite. I finally looked at Julian, not with anger, but with professional detachment. He was dressed in a tuxedo that was clearly too expensive for his current legal solvency. He was a bad investment walking. You misunderstand the nature of the funds, Julian, I stated, keeping my tone educational. That $150,000 was not borrowed. It was stolen. And it was applied to a securities fraud bond, which is now public record. I have the receipts, by the way. Bank statements and transfer documents. They are right here. I patted the slim, expensive leather folder in my purse. The gesture was small, but the implication that I held the documentation of their collective ruin hit them with tangible force. Julian laughed, a brittle, performative sound. Receipts? Elara, darling, you missed the point. You are outside the family circle now. That money is gone. You are disposable. You have no standing here. He gestured dismissively at the grand ballroom. We are celebrating life. Go home. Go back to your spreadsheets. My mother grasped my arm, her nails digging in. If you cause any more trouble, we will have the venue security remove you. You are interfering with a private event. I didn't flinch from her grip. I looked past her shoulder, directly at Mr. Davies, the venue manager, who was now subtly placing a clipboard on the registration desk. Mother, there is a fundamental flaw in your threat, I noted calmly. You assume that I require a ticket to be here, and you assume that the venue's security staff answers to your rental agreement. Julian rolled his eyes. Oh, please. What is this, one of your tedious legal lectures? Not a lecture, Julian. A professional disclosure, I corrected. I reached into my purse, extracted the folder of doom, and opened it to the very first, impeccably notarized document. I slid the deed of trust onto the small, antique side table near the ice sculpture, its heavy parchment announcing its importance. The Opaline Gala is indeed a private event, I agreed, lifting my gaze to meet my parents' increasingly horrified expressions. The lease agreement you signed is short-term and applies only to the use of the grand ballroom. It stipulates that the contracted party must not engage in any activity that materially damages the reputation of the landlord, which, in this case, includes documented felony fraud using stolen funds. My father leaned over, trying to read the title of the deed. His hand trembled. I continued, my voice gaining the low authority I used when addressing a construction team on a live site. The truth is, I did not disregard your text message simply because I am vindictive. I disregarded it because on October 14th, when you uninvited me, I was already engaged with my legal team, finalizing the terms of my entry tonight. I picked up the final, heavy sheaf of papers from the folder, the eviction notice, and tapped it lightly against my palm. Welcome, everyone, I said, looking not at my family, but briefly upward at the magnificent, vaulted ceiling of the grand ballroom. I know you expected to see Elara, the scapegoat. Instead, you get Elara, the landlord. #ACT4, the immediate notice to quit the air in the grand ballroom, previously thick with expensive perfume and self-congratulation, suddenly fractured. My father snatched the deed of trust from the table, crumpling the edge of the parchment in his desperate grip. You bought this building? That's impossible. Where did you get the money? You were saving for a down payment. This is fake, he stammered, his voice climbing an octave. Julian stared at the heavy document, his face losing its practiced smoothness. If you owned the building, you would have told us. This is a pathetic attempt to distract from your lack of empathy, Elara. I didn't tell you because your interest is not in my success, Julian, I replied, allowing a hint of professional fatigue to enter my voice. It is only in my resources. I secured this purchase through grandmother Eleanor's trust, a financial arrangement put in place specifically to protect assets from this family's particular strain of fiscal mismanagement. Before my mother could launch the inevitable emotional attack, I gave a small, almost imperceptible nod toward Mr. Davies, the venue manager. He smoothly moved past the head table, taking the microphone from the stand near the anniversary cake. The MC, sensing chaos, tried to interject, "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the brief interruption." Mr. Davies gently handed me the microphone. The moment the small, cold metal hit my hand, the crowd hushed. 200 people, many of whom were business associates of my parents, looked on. They were expecting a toast, they were about to witness a foreclosure. I approached the stand, setting the folder of doom squarely on the polished surface. I didn't shout. I didn't even raise my voice above the level necessary for the sound system to carry it effortlessly across the ballroom. Good evening, I began. I am Elara, the legal proprietor of Opaline Towers, LLC. I was not invited to this event. I am here purely in a professional capacity, as the landlord. The room erupted in a wave of whispers, but my voice cut through the noise with clinical clarity. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne, secured this venue under a standard short-term rental agreement. Unfortunately, the terms of that contract have been irrevocably breached. My mother lunged toward the microphone, but my father, realizing the severity of the situation, physically restrained her, his hand clamped over her forearm. Elara, stop this madness. This is a family dispute. Not for public consumption. My father pleaded, now trying to appeal to my sense of social decorum, the very thing he had just used to exclude me. I ignored him, my eyes scanning the room, making contact with the assembled guests, the developers who had financed my projects, the legal partners who respected my rigor. The breach is financially and legally material, I continued, lifting receipt 1, bank statements and fraudulent transfer memo from the folder. 2 weeks ago, my parents executed a felony transfer of $150,000 from my private, dedicated down payment account, using credentials they accessed without authorization. I held up the printed statement, the 6-figure debit highlighted in bright yellow marker. This money was stolen to secure the bail bond for my brother, Julian Hawthorne, who is currently facing charges of securities fraud and racketeering. The use of criminally acquired funds for the benefit of a contracting party, combined with the public legal jeopardy surrounding the charges, constitutes a clear violation of the moral turpitude and reputation clauses of their rental agreement. Julian took a sharp, gasping breath. Several guests, especially those associated with municipal finance, visibly recoiled. The socialite facade was peeling away, revealing the raw, ugly reality underneath, theft and fraud. My mother, finally wrenching free from my father's grip, cried out, "It was family money. You were selfish. We saved Julian." "No, mother," I corrected, holding up the second document, receipt 2, the screenshot of the betrayal text. "It was my money, for my future, which you deemed irrelevant compared to Julian's freedom." I paused, letting the implication land. "You then uninvited me from this gala, stating in writing that I was disposable right now. Julian is not." I let the silence hang, allowing the assembled elite to digest the level of callousness. They weren't reacting to a petty family squabble, they were reacting to the systematic financial abuse of the person who was demonstrably the most successful in the room. My parents' carefully curated image, 50 years of stability and respectable wealth, collapsed under the weight of those 3 pieces of paper, the deed, the bank statement, and the text. I retrieved the final, most crucial document, the official eviction notice to quit. As landlord, and citing the documented criminal theft, fraud, and public degradation of the venue owner, I have the contractual right to terminate this agreement immediately, I announced, placing the document directly on the head table, right next to the 3-tiered cake centerpiece. "Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne, and Mr. Julian Hawthorne, you are hereby served with an immediate notice to quit the premises. The contract is terminated effective 7:45 p.m., October 29th. The venue must be completely vacated, including all personal property, within 30 minutes. The room descended into utter chaos. Guests gasped, murmuring turned into panicked discussions, and several people reached for their phones, eager to capture the moment or call their lawyers. My father's face was the color of ash. "You can't do this. The deposit. The cost. We paid for the night. The initial deposit is forfeit, covering the emergency cleaning and reputational damage," I said, retrieving the microphone. "If you fail to vacate the premises by 8:15 p.m., the remainder of your expensive floral arrangements and decorative lighting will be catalogued as abandoned property and removed by the building's cleanup crew. Security will then escort you out." I turned to Mr. Davies. "Mr. Davies, please initiate the emergency evacuation protocol. Please ensure the safety of the invited guests and confirm the primary exits are open. The music should be turned off." The lavish orchestral music abruptly cut out. Julian, his golden child status shattered into a million pieces of broken pride, stepped forward, his face contorted in a sneer of pure hatred. "You spiteful little architect. You think this makes you powerful? You are still just the girl who keeps the books." I met his gaze, completely unmoved. "I keep the books, Julian, and now I own the house the books are kept in. Your parents deemed me disposable, but I was quietly securing the foundation you now stand on. You are currently trespassing on my property, Julian. and in 30 minutes, you will be homeless, financially ruined, and socially annihilated. I looked at my parents, who stood paralyzed between the wreckage of their 50th anniversary celebration and the certainty of their legal and social destruction. Consider the cost of Julian's freedom paid in full, I concluded, my business concluded. I set the microphone down, retrieved the empty folder of doom, and turned my back on the sudden, shocking silence of the grand ballroom. I had served the notice. The eviction was underway. And the scapegoat was finally free. #ACT5. The no-contact resolution. I did not wait to watch my family gather their expensive party favors and shame-filled expressions. Once the eviction notice was served, my professional duties were complete. I left the Opaline Towers, stepping out onto the midnight street with the quiet satisfaction of an architect who has successfully demolished a condemned structure. My legal counsel had already filed the formal police report, flagging the $150,000 transfer as outright larceny. The bank statements, the access memo, and the confession text, "The money is gone, but it saved Julian's life," were all attached. It wasn't about recouping the cash, it was about ensuring the transaction remained labeled as criminal, thereby cementing the contract breach. Julian's freedom had been purchased not by family sacrifice, but by financial crime committed by his parents. The next morning, the silence was broken by the sound of my phone notifications melting down. I found 47 missed calls and dozens of texts. Julian had opted for venomous text messages, accusing me of ruining mother's health and abandoning family values. My mother's attempts were more manipulative, pivoting between tears and vague threats of legal action against the venue owner, me, ironically. One text from my father stood out, *Father, 9:12 a.m. *Elara, the building purchase is irrelevant. We need to talk about the $150,000. Julian's lawyers require that money back immediately for the escrow fund. We are willing to call it a loan if you agree to sign a document stating that the transaction was consensual. We can still save your brother and your relationship with us. You need to fix this. Call me, ***. I did not call him. I initiated the final, critical piece of documentation, the formal severing of all ties. I drafted a concise email, copying my personal lawyer, Julian's lawyer, whose contact information I easily found via the bail bond filings, and my parents. Subject: Final communication regarding Opaline Towers and financial theft * to the Hawthorns *. This communication serves as a final, definitive declaration regarding all future personal and professional interactions. *1. Eviction and ownership. The immediate eviction from Opaline Towers is final, non-negotiable, and legally sound. I am the sole owner of Opaline Towers, LLC. Any attempt to breach the premises will result in criminal trespass charges, *2. Stolen funds. The $150,000 taken from my account is not a loan. It is the subject of a larceny report filed with the City Police Department on October 29 at 8 p.m. That capital is now legal evidence in an ongoing criminal investigation related to securities fraud and accessory to theft. I will not sign any document falsifying the nature of this transaction, *3. No contact. Due to the documented pattern of financial abuse, theft, and deliberate emotional cruelty, receipt 2, the disposable text, I am initiating full, permanent no contact. All phone numbers and email addresses associated with all three of you have been blocked. Any attempts to contact me will be routed directly to my legal counsel for immediate enforcement of harassment injunctions. I wish you peace, and I wish Julian the clarity required to face the consequences of his own actions. Elara Hawthorne, proprietor, Opaline Towers, LLC, *. I pressed send. It was the most important document I had ever drafted, not for its architectural scale, but for its structural integrity regarding my own life. It was a foundation built entirely on self-respect. The immediate consequences were swift and satisfyingly public. The story of the anniversary eviction dominated the local social media landscape. My reputation, built on competence and uncompromising business ethics, remained intact, even strengthened. The public consensus was unanimous: the architect was justified. My parents, however, were left financially exposed and socially ridiculed. Julian's legal team, seeing the evidence of criminally acquired bail money, abandoned him within the week, leaving him to face the full force of the prosecutor's office without my financial cushion. The $150,000 remained locked away as evidence, lost to all of them. Months later, I stood in the renovated ground floor of the Opaline Towers building, where my grandmother's old jewelry shop used to be. I had transformed the space into my new architectural firm's headquarters. The $150,000 down payment I had diligently saved was never actually needed, but its theft had served a greater purpose: it purchased my freedom. My partner, Daniel, a pragmatic landscape architect who never once asked about my family's drama, approached me, holding 2 steaming mugs of coffee. "Are you checking the foundation again, Elara?" he asked, a gentle tease in his voice. "Always," I smiled, accepting the coffee. "Ensuring the structure is sound. No toxic settling allowed." Daniel was my chosen family, a life built on mutual respect and transparent communication, the antithesis of the transactional arrangement I'd escaped. My biological family, meanwhile, was slowly but surely dismantled by their own greed. They lost their social standing, and Julian continued his downward spiral, finally facing the jail time they had tried to steal my future to prevent. I never heard their voices again. There were no more receipts to keep, no more accounts to audit, and no more emotional debts to pay. I didn't choose forgiveness, I chose factual disengagement. I had bought my building, severed the poisonous ties, and finally, after decades of being disposable, I had built a life that was permanent and entirely my own. The quiet dignity of true ownership was the best revenge.